Have you ever woken up from a dream and felt like something was slightly different in your reality? You open your eyes, but for a few seconds you're still not sure if you're really awake. Your body feels heavy. Your mind is still confused, trying to figure out exactly where you are. It's like part of you is still somewhere else, in an undefined space between two worlds. And then, gradually, you return to the familiar reality. Or do you? Those last few minutes before waking up are different. You've definitely felt something strange in that brief moment, something hard to explain rationally. Maybe you've woken up with an unsettling feeling that something subtly changed, even though everything around you looks exactly the same. That happens because, in those moments, you're experiencing a very particular state of consciousness, a liminal state, where you're not fully awake, but also not completely immersed in the dream world. Although it's something routine, few people really understand what's happening in those brief moments. During that transition from deep sleep to waking up, your perception of reality isn't fully solid. You experience a delicate moment where your consciousness is open to different possibilities. This is exactly where the borders between dream and reality seem to blur. After waking up from a dream, have you ever felt like you were living in a suspended moment between two worlds? That feeling isn't just an illusion of the mind, but something much deeper and more complex, connected to how your consciousness moves between different states of awareness. This phenomenon raises a series of intriguing questions about the nature of reality itself and human consciousness. Could it be that in those brief minutes of transition, we're accessing something hidden, something usually out of reach during our normal waking state? Could it be that, in those moments, our minds have access to broader realities or dimensions that we're not aware of in our everyday life? The answer to what happens to your consciousness 5 minutes before you wake up could completely change how you understand waking up and the reality around you. While you're still trying to understand that strange feeling of being between two worlds, something fascinating is already happening inside your mind. Your brain has started waking up long before you opened your eyes. This transition doesn't happen instantly or in a straight line. On the contrary, it's a complex and very organized process that begins in deeper and unconscious levels of your mind before reaching your conscious awareness. In the final minutes before fully waking up, the brain starts to show a significant increase in electrical activity, especially in the frontal cortex, the area responsible for logical thinking, decision-making, and motor planning. In that moment, it's like your mind is carefully adjusting every detail necessary for you to return to the waking world with safety and coherence. And even though this is a process widely studied by neuroscience, few people really understand the depth of this neurological transition. In this in-between state, often called the hypnopompic state, your mind still holds onto residual elements of dreams while it begins to absorb the first signs of the physical environment. This creates a unique experience where dreams and reality temporarily mix. Your brain is still trying to separate these two distinct realities, working hard to figure out what is a memory from a dream and what is a real sensory perception. It's exactly this temporary overlap that often creates those confusing experiences like vivid images, strange sounds, or even physical sensations that don't seem to belong to the real physical world. During these brief transition moments, you're not fully connected to reality yet, and your brain is fine-tuning, reorganizing perceptions, and preparing you to interact with the outside world. But this delicate period leads to a deep and important question. If our brain constantly needs to rebuild our perception of reality when we wake up, what does that say about how solid and stable reality really is? The point is that, from a brain perspective, waking up is more than just opening your eyes and going back to daily routines. It's about rebuilding your entire conscious perception, every morning. The electrical activity in the brain during these minutes is like an orchestra that starts playing gradually until it reaches perfect harmony. But until that harmony is reached, perception is unstable. That means the sense of absolute reality we feel during the day is much more fragile than we think, shaped minute by how our brain processes both sensory and internal information. These in-between moments of waking up make us reflect on something unavoidable. Is the state we call waking reality really as solid and objective as we believe? Or is it just the way our brain chose to organize how we see the world? And what if, in that brief window, we could get a clearer glimpse of how our mind really builds the reality we live in every day? Maybe then we'd realize that waking up isn't just a biological process, but an open window to better understand the limits and possibilities of human consciousness itself. In this delicate process of waking up, your mind not only rebuilds your conscious perception, but also needs to reorganize the reality around you. Imagine your brain working like a computer that needs to reboot every morning to reload all the information necessary for your day. However, in this mental reboot, small glitches can happen, what many call reality glitches. These brief moments can make you perceive the world around you in a strange, unusual, or slightly disturbing way. Have you ever woken up and felt that something about your surroundings was just off? Many people report odd experiences right after waking up, objects that seem out of place, colors that appear altered, or even an unexplained feeling that something is different, even though nothing seems to have changed. This kind of experience, which is usually subtle, is a direct result of the brain trying to reassemble conscious perception after spending hours in the dream world. During deep sleep, external sensory input is significantly reduced, and your brain creates its own inner realities. When you wake up, this same brain has to tune back into the outside world, a complex process that can cause momentary perception errors. Another very common phenomenon in this transition is the feeling known as deja vu, that strange sense that you've lived that exact moment before. While science hasn't yet found a definite explanation, a common theory is that deja vu results from a temporary glitch in the memory system, especially heightened in this transitional state. Your brain tries to fit present experiences into already familiar references, creating a sense of familiarity where, rationally, there should be none. The occurrence of these glitches makes us question how stable our daily perception of reality really is. If our experience depends so directly on our brain's ability to interpret external input correctly, maybe what we call objective reality isn't as fixed as we assume. Are these moments of distorted perception just neurological errors, or could they be signs that our understanding of reality is more fragile and subjective than we'd like to admit? These fleeting moments when reality seems distorted offer a rare opportunity to reflect deeply on how the human mind builds and perceives the world around us. Our brain, while incredibly powerful, is also prone to errors and misinterpretations, especially when it's rebooting or recalibrating conscious perception. What this means is that our perceived reality might essentially be just a constructed version, continuously shaped by how we process sensory information. When we reflect on these brief moments of altered perception, an intriguing possibility comes up. Maybe, during this transition, we're not just experiencing different ways of perceiving. Maybe we're accessing different layers of reality itself. In this subtle transition where reality seems to slip briefly through our hands, something intriguing happens in the connection between mind and body. Normally, when we're asleep, especially during the stage of sleep known as REM, the body enters a protective state of muscle paralysis. This natural paralysis serves a clear purpose: to keep you from physically acting out your dreams, protecting you from potential harm. But sometimes, That paralysis continues even after your mind has already woken up. It's exactly this disconnection that gives rise to the well-known phenomenon of sleep paralysis. In this strange state, the person is fully awake and mentally aware, but the body doesn't respond to movement commands. The sensation can be deeply uncomfortable, even frightening, especially when it's accompanied by strange perceptions, like sensing an unknown presence in the room or a weight on your chest that makes it hard to breathe. But what is really happening during these moments? Why does this separation between the waking mind and the sleeping body occur? From a scientific point of view, sleep paralysis is explained as a kind of temporary brain glitch. It simply takes a few seconds or minutes for the brain to fully turn off the muscle paralysis mechanism after the mind wakes up. The brain, which has already become conscious, hasn't yet sent the right signals to the body to wake up too. Neurologically speaking, this experience is relatively common and well documented, a clear example of the complexity and sensitivity of the processes involved in waking up. However, cultures around the world have long offered spiritual or mystical explanations for this phenomenon. Ancient traditions interpret this experience not just as a brain glitch, but as a moment of spiritual opening, a kind of temporary portal to other realities or dimensions. Some traditions even suggest that during those brief moments, our consciousness is literally navigating between worlds. The presence that many people report feeling during these episodes is interpreted in some spiritual views as an entity, or maybe just an expanded state of human consciousness that manifests in this strange way. No matter which perspective you choose, scientific, spiritual, or somewhere in between, sleep paralysis forces us to deeply reflect on the relationship between consciousness and the physical body. If, even for a few moments, the mind can be fully active while the body remains still, it strongly suggests that our consciousness isn't as tied to the physical body as we usually assume. This brief disconnection challenges our common belief that the mind and body always work in perfect sync. This naturally leads to the crucial question: how should we interpret this experience? Is sleep paralysis just a neurological error, a momentary malfunction of our brain during a natural process? Or could it actually represent something deeper and more meaningful? Maybe even a rare opportunity to explore expanded dimensions of our own consciousness. Considering this possibility opens a powerful path toward understanding the nature of waking up and the limits of conscious reality. After all, if our consciousness can separate from the physical body, if only briefly, what does that mean for how we view our own identity, our existence, and even our purpose? In those brief moments when your mind and body seem temporarily disconnected, another fascinating element is at play: your perception of time. During sleep, especially in the final phases before waking, time doesn't follow the strict rules we're used to in our waking state. While awake, we perceive time as linear, constant, and mostly predictable. But during dreams, the mind seems to enter a sort of parallel universe where minutes can feel like hours, days, or even years. In dreams, time becomes elastic, flexible, and deeply subjective. This distortion happens because the dreaming brain is no longer anchored to the limits of external sensory input. Instead, it generates a complex internal reality where events and storylines unfold at completely different speeds than what we experience while awake. Neural activity during dreams happens in different patterns than those used in our usual time perception, allowing a radically different experience of time passing. This time distortion reaches its peak in the final moments before fully waking up. Many people report highly detailed dreams, full of emotions, sensations, and experiences that seem to last for days, weeks, or even years, all within the short span of a few minutes before opening their eyes. This phenomenon reveals something deeply meaningful about how our brain processes and perceives time, showing us that what we think of as a solid, universal concept, time, is actually highly subjective and malleable. These experiences raise a critical question about the fundamental nature of time. Could it be that our consciousness, at least temporarily, frees itself from the traditional limits of linear time as we approach awakening? Maybe in those moments, we're accessing different versions of reality, or even different versions of ourselves, that exist outside the standard structure of past, present, and future. Maybe in this liminal state, our minds are able to go beyond the rigid boundaries that define our usual conscious experience. The idea that our consciousness might drift or float through different times or realities while we sleep has deep implications for how we understand time itself. It directly challenges the common belief that time is a fixed, continuous stream moving in only one direction. Instead, it suggests that our experience of time is highly personal, shaped by how our brain processes and interprets information. If our perception of time can shift so drastically in just a short altered state of consciousness, it makes us wonder, are we really stuck inside a single, limited way of experiencing time? Or are we only beginning to discover the true possibilities of how our consciousness interacts with this mysterious dimension we call time? These questions invite us to view our everyday experience from a radically different angle, opening the door to the idea that our mind has far more capacity than we typically realize, abilities that may become more accessible in those fleeting moments between deep sleep and full wakefulness. Maybe, in those moments, we're closer to realizing that what we call reality is a far more complex experience than we usually believe. That fascinating ability of the mind to temporarily break free from the usual limits of time suggests that those final moments before waking are more important than we often realize. Many people report that during those last moments of sleep, they receive insights, messages, or revelations that sometimes seem to have a significant impact on their lives. These aren't just ordinary dreams, but intensely vivid experiences filled with meaning and unusual clarity, sometimes with a precision that feels almost unsettling. These experiences can range from small personal realizations to big discoveries that change entire lives. In many documented cases, great artists, inventors, and thinkers have said they received important inspiration during those precious seconds at the edge between sleep and wakefulness. It's as if, for a few moments, the human subconscious can connect with something far beyond the usual range of waking consciousness, gaining access to answers or knowledge that feels beyond our normal reach. From a neuroscience perspective, these messages and insights can be understood as the direct result of intense, creative brain activity that happens during the final stages of REM sleep. At that moment, the mind is extremely active, full of connections and free associations, making it easier for new ideas to appear and old problems to be solved. The traditional scientific explanation says that these insights are simply the result of subconscious reorganization and processing of previously acquired information, a kind of natural problem solving that happens without direct conscious effort. But spiritual and philosophical traditions around the world interpret these experiences from a deeper perspective. They suggest that in those final moments before waking, our consciousness might be temporarily connected to something much greater and deeper. For these traditions, dreams are not just internal mental creations, but portals to spiritual realities, parallel dimensions, or higher levels of universal consciousness. In this special state, we gain privileged access to a vast field of information, tapping into answers and guidance that come from a broader and more universal intelligence or consciousness. But how do we properly interpret these strange and unique insights and messages? The answer to that may depend entirely on how we choose to see the world. If we take a purely materialistic view, these events are just neurological coincidences. But if we adopt a broader and more spiritual perspective, these same events gain deeper meaning, suggesting possible connections to greater, potentially transformative realities. No matter how you choose to view them, it's undeniable that they carry a powerful force. These experiences not only expand our understanding of sleep and dreams, but also suggest a deeper view of human consciousness and its hidden connections to the universe. And it's exactly in this space of openness that we might start to better understand who we are, what our true potential is, and what mysteries our mind can uncover while it moves between the worlds of consciousness and dreams. These intriguing and deeply enlightening experiences that occur in the final moments before we awaken raise even broader questions about the nature of our consciousness and the very reality in which we live. After all, what we consider to be reality may not be something absolute, but rather a specific version among countless other possible ones. During sleep, especially in those final moments of transition, our consciousness might have a rare chance to perceive not just one single reality, but several possible versions of ourselves and our existence. Parallel realities are not just science fiction or abstract theories. In fact, science has been showing that we live in a universe much wider and more complex than we used to believe. Quantum physics has already told us that reality can exist in a state of multiple simultaneous possibilities, an infinite number of potential paths coexisting at the same time. And it's exactly in this context that the experience of waking up gains a new and profound dimension. When we wake up, we're not simply returning to the same world we left before falling asleep. We're, in a way, choosing or entering a specific version of reality from many options that exist. This choice, of course, usually happens unconsciously and automatically, guided by the mental patterns and emotions we've been cultivating daily. But it's important to recognize that it is still a choice. Each time we wake up, we enter a slightly different universe, directly influenced by our own consciousness and inner state. That's exactly why many people feel subtle but clear sensations that something changed when they woke up. Have you ever felt different upon waking up? As if you had stepped into a slightly different reality than the one where you fell asleep? These sensations are common and often reported, even if not always clearly understood. They may be small signs that our consciousness is, in fact, shifting between different versions of reality, versions that might differ in small details or even in something more fundamental. These moments teach us something powerful about our active role in creating the reality around us. After all, if with every awakening we're literally entering a specific version among many, it means our consciousness isn't just a passive observer of reality. On the contrary, we are direct co-creators of the reality we experience every day. Every thought, every emotion, every belief we nurture might be actively influencing the path our consciousness chooses among the many realities available. This idea not only expands our understanding of how reality works, it also brings a great responsibility. If we're capable, even unconsciously, of shaping and choosing different versions of our reality, then maybe it's essential that we start to develop a deeper and more intentional awareness of what we think, feel, and believe. By doing that, we might begin to consciously navigate through the infinite possibilities available to us. But this also leads us to another question. Could it be that we're already living on some level multiple parallel existences? And what if the life you're living right now is just one version among many others your consciousness could have chosen? When we reflect on this possibility, we may realize that our daily lives might be much more deeply connected to the universe than we ever imagined. And it's exactly by exploring these subtle and intriguing connections that we can begin to better understand the true power and potential of our own consciousness. When we start to recognize this incredible possibility, that our consciousness can move between multiple versions of reality, an even deeper question naturally comes up. In those delicate moments between sleep and wakefulness, are we actually connecting with something far beyond our physical body and the usual limits that define us? Many spiritual traditions and ancient wisdoms have pointed out, for thousands of years, that the process of waking up may not be just a return to normal consciousness, but a chance to connect with something greater, a universal, expansive, and interconnected consciousness. In this liminal state, where our brain and perception haven't fully settled into physical reality, there may be great potential to perceive deeper layers of reality. During those brief transitional moments, many people report feeling a sense of expanded consciousness, something that goes beyond the individual self and allows them to briefly touch a state of broader, more harmonious connection with everything. This experience is often described as an expanded state of consciousness, where our perception opens up to deeper and more interconnected realities, not limited by the body or traditional space and time. According to many ancient spiritual traditions, from Eastern philosophies to Western mystical practices, human consciousness is not just a function of the brain or a product of the physical body. On the contrary, it's seen as a fundamental spiritual essence, something that exists beyond the physical and material limits we usually associate with who we are. In this view, the delicate moment when we wake up can act like a natural portal, a privileged access point to higher levels of consciousness and perception, allowing us to briefly touch a more universal and profound state of being. This spiritual view suggests that what we call waking up each day could be a powerful metaphor, the awakening of consciousness to a higher level of understanding about reality and existence itself. In that context, every waking moment isn't just a routine return to daily life, but an opportunity to recognize and strengthen our connection with a greater, more meaningful spiritual reality. If we pay attention, these brief moments can become precious chances to realize that we are much more than the physical body or the external circumstances that define our everyday life. By reflecting on this, we see that our journey of self-knowledge and spiritual growth can be deeply enriched by consciously acknowledging these liminal states. With the idea that our consciousness can transcend material limits and connect with higher levels of reality, we open the door to a deeper understanding of our true nature and purpose in this world. This awareness completely changes how we see who we are and what our real potential is. Maybe, then, we are just beginning to understand the infinite possibilities of consciousness, not just as something trapped in material reality, but as a living and dynamic expression of a much greater spiritual reality. And this, naturally, leads us to a deeper reflection. Are we truly aware of the real capabilities of our consciousness? If we are spiritual beings living a physical experience, then maybe our consciousness can serve as a gateway to better understand this larger reality. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with others so they can benefit from this message. And don't forget to leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts, reflections, and experiences. Thanks again for watching and for joining me. Take care, and see you soon.